All right, so this is the completion of phase one of the MCU. It's crazy to think of how fucking far back this was. And it wasn't even that short of a time, you know? This movie isn't that old. And to see how many movies we've gotten since and how much has happened since this first Avengers movie is wild. But this is it, man. This was the big event. This is what they had been promising all the way since back in 2008. They were assembling this team. They were getting them together. We were going to see them all on screen together. You were going to see Cap. You were going to see Hulk. You were going to see Iron Man. You were going to see freaking everybody. And it was so just mind-blowing that it actually was successful, happened, and has continued to be as successful it is wonderfully so in my opinion. I'm sure there's definitely some people that disagree with that, but they have seemed to not understand what fun is, and even if they don't, I don't understand why they want to hate on somebody who likes something. But that's nor here nor there. Let's stick to the fun of this movie. So, having going into the Avengers the first time, I went into it with not liking Iron Man 2, Captain America the First Avenger, Thor, or The Incredible Hulk. Okay, so the only movie that I actually liked before going into this one was Iron Man. Now, having gone back, if you've watched my reviews on these, I have enjoyed all fucking 5 of them very, very much so. So I'm in a completely different place, which is what put me in a completely different mindset going into this film. I actually cared about these characters. I liked these characters. I liked, and not because just I had an affinity for them after these films, because I did really enjoy their characters as they progressed in later installments. This is from the characters which they are in these, coming off of the previous films in this saga here. And so that just gave the film a completely different weight to me. Going into this, really liking these characters from the previous installments really helped. And it also helped me because I actually knew what the fuck was going on, because I watched them in such close succession with one another, as opposed to watching Iron Man and Incredible Hulk back in 2008, and then watching, Thor and whatever, like a couple years later, Iron Man, Captain America, Winter Soldier. Like, years had passed since I had seen some of these, so I'd forgotten through lines and threads and connections and all of these kinds of things. So watching them all together, caring about those characters, coming into this, liking all of that stuff, knowing what's going on, holy shit, did that help me like this movie so much more than I did originally. Now, when people hear me say that, because I kind of brought that up on my Facebook, they were like, oh my god, you didn't love this movie, and you didn't like this movie. No, I liked it. It was fine. It was an entertaining popcorn type of film. I watched the explosions, the pretty colors, and I moved on. And I was like, yeah, that was fun. And everyone was fucking gushing over it. Oh my god, it's the most amazing thing ever. It's the greatest action movie, this and that. And having now watched it with all of those previously mentioned things, yeah, I totally understand why people were jumping out of their shit. Now, I have to also, though, take into consideration, I have seen Infinity War, I have seen Civil War, I've seen a lot of these bigger films than this one is now, so this one does feel a little mild in comparison to something along those lines. So my reaction to this is a little tainted in a way. That all being said, this is still a fantastic first effort team up movie. For what they were asking of Joss Whedon and company out of this movie, to make all of those characters blend on screen and to make it appealing to people who maybe not only don't know much about comics, but also maybe haven't even seen the previous installments that came before this, to know the connections. I think they did a damn good job making this very entertaining. For practically everybody. It is kind of that family film that you can take your anybody to, with also not being so family oriented that somebody who's more jaded towards those kinds of things would be, kind of feeling, singled out, outcasted, whatever. Like, they would still appreciate it. I feel like this is kind of a film for everybody, unless you're just not into action, which I definitely know some of those kinds of people. But if this is your kind of movie, you're gonna like this movie. So yeah, just seeing everyone up on screen, the way that they presented, the way they did it, the way they brought everyone together, the threats, all of that really did work. It's a remarkable achievement, and I know that a lot of people may not give it its credit for that, but it really, really is. These kinds of films are really kind of just looked at. I don't know. I feel like they're looked down upon for the amount of effort that would have to be put into the writing, to the amount of work that's put. It's insane to really think about it. So kudos to these guys. But anyway, so let's stick to the story here. Now, Loki is sent down to retrieve the Tesseract, and the Tesseract is acting up. And so the Tesseract sends Loki through like a fucking Terminator. He's all in the crouched position and everything. And he comes out and he can control men's minds. So he touches their chest. He takes over Hawkeye like right out the gate. Hawkeye is almost a freaking bad guy throughout this entire movie. And you got to remember, at this point, Hawkeye really was just a background character in Thor, and that's it. We didn't get much from him. So if you didn't see the trailer where they're all teamed up out there with that iconic team up shot there, you were thinking, oh, he probably isn't coming back from this. Who knows? You don't really know, because you don't really know much about him, even if, as I said, you've seen Thor or any of the other previous movies, because that's all he makes this little brief cameo here. So now that he's a bigger character and he's getting his own TV series, which I'm really excited about, yeah, it's funny to watch it now, thinking back of how little we got to see him in Thor. He was such a minor character. He's still not extremely explored in this franchise yet, but with his show, he'll definitely get his due time. And so once things have went down, we find that, Nick Fury tells everyone, we are at war, time to bring the Avengers together. Avengers Assemble, which is a title that they tried to put on later, but we all refer to this as Avengers. But if you look certain places, it's called Avengers Assemble now. I don't know what's up with that, but this is just the Avengers to me. But it does have, it's kind of like episode 4, A New Hope. It used to just be Star Wars. But then after its popularity, they tacked on the episode 4, like, oh, this is really popular. I'm going to do 3 films before this, and I'm going to do 2 films after this. So that was planned all along. Bullshit. As soon as the movie's super successful, it's got to become a soulless cash grab. So just for all you people out there you go. Fuck. So Natasha is being interrogated. Love pretty much everything with Black Widow's action sequences, and her in general. I just love her. But her action sequences are some of the best. And to think that she's having a movie possibly being shot soon and released possibly next year is very exciting to me. Because I love her character, but I also love all of her action sequences. My buddy Travis Gillespie, he talks about how her action sequences are some of his favorite in the entire franchise, like just hers alone. And I have to agree with him. They're so well choreographed and so well done. It's always really fun to watch anytime she's having to kick some ass. And this whole interrogation sequence when she's tied to the chair and she's like, this idiot's giving me everything and all this. And he's like, what? No, I'm not. And she breaks the chair, she flips over this guy, and she's in. And then Coulson's just on the line waiting. The humor is really funny. It's blended together super well. Then she gets on. She just walks out of there like it was no big deal. Great stuff. Then she has to go lure Bruce Banner with a kid into this thing. And she tells him that she's just there alone. Liar. And Bruce knows it. But this is when the chemistry between Bruce and her start coming out. I'm getting ink all over my damn hand. Guess my pen's fucked up. But I know there's some people that seem to have a big problem with them having a thing, but I don't, so I'm not going to go into it. And so they get him in. The reason they want him is because he has gamma expertise, and this cube gives off that. And the last time we saw him, he was in hiding, but S.H.I.E.L.D. never lost sight of him. And Cap, of course, is not interested because Cap's too good for everything. This is the first time we see Stark Tower, so he's built an entire fucking building. Stark seems to just move so fast. He can make 47 suits and a tower and everything overnight. Pepper and Tony are together in a relationship here, which is really cute. And we get the flying aircraft carrier, which is also invisible, of course, why not? And Agent Coulson fanboying over Cap is adorable. Loki, of course, wants to be a king, which reigns true from what we know of him in Thor. Captain America fights Loki. Captain America versus a god. Yeah, right. And so, of course, Loki is taken hostage, but Thor comes from him. How Thor comes from him, I'm not sure, since the Bifrost was broken and it's reforged in the Dark World. I don't know. I guess they just reforged it then. I don't know how the hell Thor comes here and why he does check on Jane, so I'm glad that's at least acknowledged a tiny bit. But Loki clearly says, you'll never see her again. And then they what? Build it back up in a week? Is this time over in Asgard the same as on Earth? I would think so. If it was different, then time would have passed much greater because he's doing a bunch of shit while he's gone and no more time has passed on Earth. So they built up the Bifrost in what? A weekend? Maybe Tony Stark was on it. He seems to be able to build a fucking building in about 2 seconds. So yeah, I'm not sure how the Bifrost is brought back so quickly. It's not even really addressed. But it is what it is. So then Iron Man versus Thor. And Thor uses his lightning on Iron Man, which charges his suit up to 400%, which I thought was really funny. And then Cap joins the fight, and he throws a shield, and Thor comes down on it, and boom, breaks, and everything goes everywhere. It's kind of like that immovable object meets that saying. That's kind of what it feels like there. An unstoppable force. And then, so he's taken into custody. Thor fucking blames himself for what happens here. Bruce and Tony finally meet, and you get to see the two brilliant minds, and he's like, look, finally, somebody speaks English. I understand that feeling for when I'm finally in a room with someone who actually knows something about movies, because people always claim to be movie nuts, and then you talk to them and they know very little. They probably know more than the average bear, which they seem to, but around someone like me, it's kind of difficult. So when I do meet those people here and there, which is a super rare moment, but when I do meet someone who does speak film, it feels like that moment where Bruce meets Tony, and it's like, oh my God, finally someone who speaks English when I'm making little references or when I'm quoting movies or, whatever. That person might actually know what the fuck I'm talking about. How wonderful. We find out that Hawkeye was the one who saved Black Widow, so they kind of have she kind of has a appreciation for him, as she should. And so SHIELD was using the Tesseract to build weapons to combat with what Thor brought with him when he came down to Earth. They were like, oh my God, we're going to have to deal with gods now. I guess we're going to have to use this to make these weapons, which I guess they got that idea from Red Skull and Hydra, since they made a ton of weapons with the Tesseract as well. So they're kind of following the Nazis' footsteps. Not a good move. And while there, the Avengers get into an argument, which is being pushed by Loki. He has the ability to kind of manipulate people's minds. So he's wanting them to fight against one another. And the Thor versus Hulk fight, great stuff. And I love when Hulk, who's like the strongest being ever, tries to pick up his hammer and can't, which of course then makes the sequence in Age of Ultron when they're sitting around trying to lift it up and Cap actually moves it a little bit. I don't know if that's just because Cap is such a great guy that he has proved himself to be worthy of something like that, because he's not stronger than the Hulk. I can sure as shit tell you that. So yeah, that's kind of an interesting sequence there. But it is funny when it happens. And then Hulk jumps out and he grabs onto the plane, and that guy tries to eject, and Hulk grabs and catches the guy fucking flying out. That is hilarious. I love stuff like that. Kind of takes me back to the Incredible Hulk movie when the Abomination grabs the rocket and bites the shit off. I just love when that just grabs the ejector seat and just throws him. Funny stuff. And then Iron Man uses his laser to try to clear the blockage in that propeller there, and then he ejects the thing. So the laser continuity of him having a one-off, because he uses it with War Machine and Iron Man 2 and says it's a one-off thing, seems to be consistent in here. So I liked that he ejects it just like he does in the second movie. Just teeny attentions to detail like that. I always appreciate them. And then Thor is put in the cage instead, which I guess Loki wanted to be caught. He wanted this all to happen, right? He was trying to get the Hulk to do this because Loki could have just phased right out of there, right? He has the ability to jump here and there, so why didn't he just get out of the cage? When the cage does drop with Thor inside of it, am I supposed to be worried that something's going to happen to Thor when he hits the ground? Like, it hits the ground and explodes. Like, if it would hit the water and it would have sunk to the bottom of the fucking ocean, then Thor would be seriously in trouble, because if he couldn't get out of that damn thing, he'd just be stuck on the bottom of the ocean and people would have to come find him. So maybe it should have hit the water instead of the rocks, because it hit the ground, it blew up, and it's like, it's Thor. He's a god. He wouldn't have been hurt. Am I supposed to believe he would have died if he stayed inside that thing? Bullshit. No, he wouldn't. He's taken way more of abuse than that in this and later on. So I'm not sure. If you can get hit by the Hulk, then you can fucking take hitting the ground at 200 miles per hour, whatever maximum velocity would be, terminal velocity would be in that cage. And Hawkeye versus Widow. So Hawkeye comes back. He's fighting Widow, which is a great fight sequence. Coulson is stabbed here, and they are told that he dies, which we know is not true because of the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. show. And we also know that freaking Nick Fury lied about that because he took his Captain America cards and like dipped them in blood because they were in the locker, and he just uses it. He uses it as manipulation, I guess. I mean, he's with Loki on that one. He uses it to get them to dedicate themselves to the fight even more than they already are. And Natasha sympathizes. Not only does she feel like she owes a debt of gratitude to Hawkeye here, but she also sympathizes with him because he was brainwashed, which she kind of already deals with herself on what happened to her when she was younger. And so the portal is opened up on top of Stark Tower, and this is when the army flies through and is attacking New York City, because in these kinds of movies, alien movies, whatever, they only seem to attack a couple cities. Los Angeles, fucking United States always, but it's always just New York or Los Angeles, and then maybe like 5% of the time something else. But those are the only cities that seem to ever get attacked by aliens in movies. It's kind of hilarious. And Loki actually almost feels bad, but then he stabs Thor because Loki is just so dedicated to being king. He just wants to be king. He feels like he was betrayed, and this is his right. He's going to make the humans on Earth bow to his feet. I love that Cap takes over and he gives orders to everyone. He actually becomes the captain of the team, the leader of the team, which you would think someone like Iron Man or whatever would fight him, but he's the strategic leader here. He's the soldier. He's the one who knows what to do here. And I feel like Cap and Black Widow and Hawkeye are pretty outmatched in this movie and are really just finding an excuse to have a purpose here. But I do like the fight sequences, especially when they do the iconic shot of all of them spinning around them, and we get to see all 6 of them back to back, which is kind of, as I said, the iconic shot. But also that scene where it's like flying through the city and it's seeing what they're all up to. It's a really cool sequence. What Hawkeye and Black Widow alone are doing is extremely impressive, seeing as how they're just normal people. But love all the Hawkeye stuff. Love what he does with the arrows. Shoots it at Loki, catches it, and he laughs, and then the thing blows up in his face. Lots of really cool sequences with Hawkeye and his arrows there. And then Hulk punching Thor was so fucking funny in the theater, but not as funny as when Loki's trying to tell Hulk what's up, and then just out of nowhere he grabs Loki and just smashes him like a kid with a rag doll and throws him on the ground, walks away, and says puny god. That was just hilarious in theaters. That was like uproarious. That everyone was laughing like a maniac. I was included. So good. Of course, they want to nuke the city. Nick Fury doesn't want to do that. He tries to stop it, but he can't thwart it. And Iron Man, of course, has to take the nuke up into space. And while up there, he tries to call Pepper to say goodbye because he's told earlier in the movie, or accused, should I say, that he would never sacrifice himself for shit. And I don't know if he gets that in his head, and Tony's kind of like me. He's a stubborn son of a bitch, and he's going to prove everyone wrong. But he takes it up, and he does go to sacrifice himself. And good thing that they waited even a second longer than they did to pull that thing for the rift to close, because Tony barely makes it. And as he's falling, they realize he's not conscious and that he's going to hit the ground, which he seems to do in a couple movies anyways, and he's fine. So I don't know if he would have survived it or not, but regardless, Hulk goes, jumps, grabs him, saves him, puts him down, and then yells to wake him up, which is another really funny moment. Hulk has a lot of the humor in this, and it really does land pretty heavily. Stan Lee's cameo is him watching the TV and thinking what's happening is a total joke. And then Thor tells them, look, Loki and the Tesseract need to be taken to Asgard. And they, I guess, begrudgingly agree to it. What are they going to do? Tell him he can't? And then, of course, we got the cutscene here of Thanos promised in the future, not all the way till Infinity War, which is crazy to have someone promised, and then like 7 years later you finally actually get it. I don't think it was 7 years. Maybe it was 6, 5, yeah, 6. I think 6 years. So long damn time, and he looks fairly similar to what he does in this new one, but not really. But they didn't know who was going to play him or any of that stuff. And then the famous end cutscene here of them all eating shawarma together. So yeah, Avengers, fun time. First one of the 4 coming up here soon. Oh, by the way, for any of you who haven't heard, avoid the fucking internet for the next week and a half, because major spoilers leaked for Endgame, which is a total damn shame that any idiot would do that. I don't know why people would do something so stupid as to put that on there. It doesn't make them rich. It doesn't make them famous. It just makes them a fucking asshole. So anyway, guys, all right, that was fun. Well, let's move on to Iron Man 3.